Hello, everybody here, and hello, everybody on Zoom. It is really yummy to be here again, especially in person, and miss all of you who are at home, and hope that on the next visit that I'm able to see you in person as well. So I want to jump into this, and I'm actually going to time myself because I want to make sure that I get to all of this. And I feel like there's a number of things around this topic of, demonstration. So the theme for the month is demonstration. And it occurred to me, and I think I may have actually used this same myth of the last time I talked about this. I'm not sure. And I wouldn't let myself go back and look to see, like, what did I say before? Because if something was happening about this idea that if we think about demonstrating anything, there rises this idea of perfection. Am I going to do it right? Do I want anybody to see me while I'm demonstrating this? Or would I rather demonstrate this in my backyard while nobody's looking but the dog? There is this idea that we are sometimes leery of doing things that we don't already have worked out or we don't already feel expert in some way. And we certainly don't want to do that in public. The whole idea of don't let perfection be the enemy of good kind of rises in this idea of spiritual practice, because sometimes it is the case that with spiritual matters or even with spiritual principle, we become very judgmental of ourselves because we don't see our expression as perfect. And then we almost take power away from ourselves because we don't think we've got it all worked out. And what we have is insufficient, or who we are is not good enough. So with this idea and the myth of perfection, as it relates to this concept of demonstration, I'd like for you to think about these three questions. The first one is, what do you demonstrate? What do you already demonstrate? As it relates to spiritual principle, what do you already demonstrate in the world? The second question is, what would you like to demonstrate? What are areas of your spiritual experience, your spiritual practice, that in your mind's eye, you could see, I would love to be able to do that. And then it's followed by, but I'm not there yet, or some other qualifier about this vision you have of who you could be in partnership with the divine. And then the third question is, who or what benefits from your demonstration? So you demonstrate something spiritually, who or what around you is the beneficiary of your demonstration? Because you and I both know it's never just you. You're never the sole beneficiary of any spiritual practice or spiritual principle that you embody and bring into the world. So we want to take a moment and become conscious, like really aware, who or what around me benefits when I demonstrate spiritual practice. So the first myth, we demonstrate all of the God we know. We demonstrate all of the God we know. Ernest Holmes tells us this about demonstration. To demonstrate through the mental and spiritual activity of thought, directed toward a definite end, we bring about a greater good, a more abundant life, a better condition than existed before. This is called demonstration. We can demonstrate at the level of our ability to know. And that last part is key. We can demonstrate at the level of our ability to know. To know something for ourselves, to know something for the world, to know something for another person, to know when another person is in the space where they cannot know. In those moments, whatever it is that we can know, we can actually demonstrate that. Merriam-Webster, or the Gospel according to Merriam-Webster, says that to demonstrate is an act, process, or means of demonstrating to the intelligence. So the demonstration is not to the spirit, the demonstration is not to the soul, but demonstration in the secular world is convincing your mind of something. It's demonstrating it to your mind so that your mind understands it. That it's also an outward expression or display of emotion. It's a show of armed force, is a dictionary definition for demonstration. A show of armed force, or a public display of group feelings towards a person or cause. So demonstrations in the street. All of those are definitions of demonstration. But demonstration fundamentally is an opportunity for us to remember and to call into consciousness all that we know of our holy journey and relationship with God. And it's more likely that those last three dictionary definitions, a show of force or a public expression, or even kind of like this demonstration of ideas, those are the things we're most familiar with when we hear the word demonstration. But what do you know for sure about God? What do you already know? Because in our knowing is our ability to demonstrate. Sometimes in life, we focus more on what we're unsure about, as opposed to drawing power from what do I know for sure? And this last 2.5 years of the pandemic and other factors, by the way, because the planet is about to probably explode on itself. We're fortunate, we're blessed to be able to still be sitting here and there's not a crater on the Watermill Highway. Like literally, like there's a bunch of stuff going on. But in the midst of all of this, what do you know for sure about God that you have experienced? That I can't tell you, but you were there when that thing happened, where you knew something and something came into existence that was probably not likely or predictable. You got evidence of how wide and spacious and who and what God is, but you don't always remember it. We don't remember it because it's almost a little bit more hypnotic to dwell in what I'm not sure about or what I don't know. If our ability to demonstrate comes from our ability to know, what don't you know about God that you'd like to explore? Because it's not like the script is written. It's not like it's all done. If there are things about God that you are curious about, like you'd like to explore, let's get to doing that. Because that which you know, you can demonstrate. The opportunity of demonstration is for all of us to grow deeper in our relationship with the divine so that we can demonstrate more. Which takes me to our second myth, is that we're willing to be wrong. In this highest iteration of ourselves, we like to think that it's okay to be wrong. Like it's okay to fail. Like we like to say that, and we believe it periodically or moment by moment, mostly when we failed. Then it's easier to kind of admit, oh yeah, and I've learned a lot from this and blah, blah, blah. But usually, like that's not in the forefront of when we start out on a new journey. It's all about like success and transformation and everything. This whole thing is going to be worked out and I'm going to know something. And that's usually not the way we start stuff. We start some things kind of like, I'm really not sure if this is going to work its way out, but I'm going to do my best and I'm going to try. I'd like for you to take a moment and just call to your mind and your heart something you've been trying to demonstrate. Some knowing that you really are, you feel ready to kind of demonstrate this new thought, this new idea. Just call that to your mind and your heart. Something where you've been devoting some spiritual and mental energy toward its manifestation. Merriam-Webster says that perfection is the quality or state of being perfect. And perfect is defined as freedom from fault or defect, flawlessness, maturity, the quality or state of being saintly, an exemplification of supreme excellence, an unsurpassable degree of accuracy or excellence. Now, when you think about this thing that you've been trying to bring forth, that you've been devoting spiritual and mental energy to, can you see any parts of that definition of perfection that are thwarting your efforts to bring something forward? Because if it's not flawless, then we think something's wrong. Or that maybe it's not worth doing, or I can't do it, or I shouldn't do it. That you don't think it's supremely excellent means that maybe you should just abandon the whole thing. And then there's this sneaky part of that you're not sure how people are going to respond if you actually bring this thing forward. Like if you have this new thought that comes into being that you begin to demonstrate, how are people going to react around you? Because possibly this new thought, when it comes through, you will be changed in some way. So there's this dual kind of like, there's all these doors to get through before you can actually demonstrate the thing, because maybe you're also a little concerned about having to shift or having to transform or having to be different than you are now when this new thing comes forward. And sometimes it shows up when you think about the people you're no longer going to be able to deal with. The topics and the ideas you're no longer going to have the space to hold because they won't be yours anymore. When we demonstrate something, it almost is like plugging ourselves back into spirit. It literally is this physical presentation of God that we did not or had not clearly been focusing on. And here's the thing, whatever is going on, it's fine. Just tell yourself the truth about it. If you're concerned that you don't want to transform, if you're concerned that, it'd be really great if I could demonstrate this thing, but I may have to give up everything to actually demonstrate this thing. Just tell yourself, you can tell me anything. Tell yourself the truth about it. Because here's the kind of bad news, is that you've already got so much evidence about what you and God have created, you're going to have a hard time convincing yourself that you can't do something. You're going to have a real hard time doing that. Because it is your thought. And it's not just yours, right? It's your thought connected to and with God, co-creating. It's a thought, but it just doesn't solely belong to you. Consider it like you've got a mortgage on the thought. Mm-hmm. And you and God is holding the mortgage. And you're making payments on a regular basis with that thought, constantly co-creating. And when you know yourself as this next thing, as this new thought, you then have this opportunity to see this new relationship with God that maybe sheds some of the unknowing, sheds some of the confusion, and celebrates like what y'all have done together, which are extraordinary things. But you've got to tell yourself the truth about that. Third and final myth, we're ready for the world to benefit. We're ready for the world to benefit. Again, think about who's benefited from what you demonstrated in your life thus far. Who's benefited? Think about the thoughts that you applied spiritual and mental energy to that were directed to a particular end, like you could see an end in sight, that manifested into something real. At dinner last night, a couple of people started talking about things that they were saying as children that manifested into reality, into the realities that they live today. And they didn't know it when they were talking about it, how, like in 3D, those words that were spoken would be. But here they are. So there's something about who around you when you demonstrate something gets to see something new about their relationship to God and what's possible for them. Some people may have seen it in your career. You may have seen it in your romantic life, in your children. Like the thought of the creation of your children and who they are is almost just the fulfillment of a thought that you had at some point. In your family, in your community, you can see that your demonstration has benefited other people. I used to hear sermons in my head. I used to hear myself preaching in my head. And I don't mean hearing somebody else talking or repeating somebody's sermon. I heard myself preaching in my head as I would walk around, as I would walk the street. And I knew I had to do something about that. I wanted to do something with that, but I couldn't have fully known that that would have led me to One Spirit Interfaith Seminary. And at a Christmas celebration, Nick and I think Susan were there, who said, hey, we've got this community out on Long Island. It's out on Long Island, it's kind of far, but if you'd be interested, maybe we could talk about you coming out. And then I came out 9 years ago. And then I preached, and there was a great space here for me to fail, to just go past the 20 minutes and trail off into random thought and eventually actually make some sense about some things. And then they said, we have, this recommitment ceremony for our prayer chaplains. Do you think you could do a workshop? Oh, me? You wonder if I could do that. Never done that before. I don't know. Willing to give it a shot. Keep expectations kind of low on what's going to happen. And then it was kind of like, well, we did that a couple of times. Kind of like, we really haven't had any new prayer chaplains since we started. You think you could kind of like put together a process and help us create some prayer chaplains? Kind of like, here's some handouts and some book that we used to use. You can take some stuff from here. Okay. Okay. Let's try it. Okay. And by the way, you're welcome, because I demonstrated that. Me and God demonstrated that. I mean, your prayer chaplain, but you're right here. But I really say that to say that everyone has a story like that, where someone called you into being, called you into knowing yourself more than you could imagine yourself to ever be. That invitation is the opportunity for all of us to demonstrate. So it doesn't have to be this, mountaintop, fire burning bush experience. It's often people just coming to you and asking you to do what, or to be who you don't even know yourself to be. And to say yes. And your yes becomes demonstration. Because in the moment that you say yes, you call forth a new understanding of yourself, to yourself, that God already knows. And then we all get to be more than we imagined ourselves to be. The pastor of a church that I attended, Unity Fellowship of Christ Church, at one point said something, and I've never forgotten it. And he said that what God has given for you to do is for you to do. And even if somebody does something similar to it, it will still not be what is yours to do. And it was his belief that you won't be able to leave the planet until that thing is done. It's just here for you. And what I think inside of this conversation of demonstration, that it's not just one thing. There are things that the universe, that humanity calls us forth to be and do. And as we do that, each time we transform and deepen our relationship with who we know ourselves to be in partnership with God. So simply say yes. Just say yes. And stop fighting yourself and God, because you're going to lose that one. You'll have some minor victories, but you are sure to lose as you continually try to ignore and get away. You can ask your prayer chaplain, not just the ones that work with me, but they'll tell you, kind of like, they didn't want to be there. We were just snotting and crying and up against stuff that we thought we had dealt with, and they're going to ask me to do what? I have to pray with those people? I'm like, you're a prayer chaplain. They're going to want you to pray with them. And they all said yes anyway. They all said yes anyway. So, say yes. God bless you.